Hi all, welcome to the channel DEVOPS-TECHSTACK. I hope you all are doing safe and sound. So today we are going to start with the day 9 of the Kubernetes series where we are going to learn about the init containers and why is it important. So without any delay, let's get started. The very first thing is, what are init containers? So init container is also a type of container that will start and run to completion before the starting the main container in the pod. Let's say you are going to create a pod for your Python application, but if you want to fetch some dependencies which are required for your Python application to run before starting the Python application code main container, then in that case, you can write a init container which will fetch those dependencies, and then once those dependencies are being fetched, it will complete that particular init container and it will start the main container. That is the main job of your init containers, right? So it acts as a preparatory step allowing you to perform initialization task. What kind of initialization task can be? Like fetching some dependencies, fetching some secret from some other vault token or somewhere else. If you want to fetch some secret from those particular URLs, or if you want to clone some repository, or if you want to configure some kind of security stuff onto your cluster. So those kind of initial step if you want to do before starting the main container or main application code container, then in that case you can go with the init container. Once it is started and completed, after that it will not do anything, right? That container will be aborted and the main container will only be come to the picture. Let's say if you have an application that needs a secret to connect to an API, but you can't hard code that in the form of secret in the application, okay? And also you can't use that pull that from the Kubernetes secret because of some security concern maybe. So in that case, you can write an init container which will fetch that secret from a secret management service like Vault or AWS Secret Manager, and it will basically write to a location inside the pod where your main application container can access it. So I will show you a particular YAML file where you will get to understand that easily, how you are writing to a file, how that the main container is taking that value from the same location, how those things are basically working with the volume and volume mount concept. I will explain you now. Now, so whenever your main application pod will start, it will first access that secret from your pod, which will help to connect with the API. So now in simple term, init containers just make ensure that your applications are always properly configured and initialized before they are started. Now this is a simple flow diagram. So I will show one demo where what I am doing, I'm trying to explain you. The very first thing is you have this init container, right? So just now I told that init container will pull the secret from some secret management tool like a vault, right? So from here, this init container is fetching that secret. And once that secret is fetched, it will write to some location or some location it will write, right? In this particular location, it is writing that particular secret, and from the same location, your main container, which will be actually running your application code, it will fetch that secret from the same place and your application can connect with that particular API. So this is a small flow diagram which init container will follow, right? So now what will happen? What are the multiple use cases for the init basically? I already told that you can load and configure the dependencies required for your application. You can create a database schema for your application. Let's say you are creating a MySQL database. In that, you need to have a table for the user's detail, and that you want to configure during the initial step only. Once the database is created, I want this table also to exist. So those kind of initial configuration you can do using the init containers. Same way, if you want to do some kind of networking configuration, or if you want to enable some kind of security checks using the TLS certificates, or if you want to access the secret from any secret management tool, or you want to wait it for some services to be created, then start the main container. So multiple use cases are there where you can use this init container and it will be helpful for you. Now I will show you a simple YAML file where I'm trying to explain this one in much more detail. So see, again, the same thing. What are the four main sections? That is API version, kind, then metadata, then the spec. API version for the init container or for the pod is basically we are creating a pod in only, and in this pod you have a few init containers and then you have a main container. So the API version for pod is v1. Then the kind is basically pod. The metadata means the name of my pod is web server pod. Under the spec section, you have to give the a specification about the containers basically. So before that, starting the main container, I am giving some init containers. What kind of init containers I am creating here? The very first init container is again a type of list. So the first item in the list of the init container is the name of the container is write IP, and the image which I am using is BGBox. So this image will be basically pulled from the Docker Hub repository, okay, from the public Docker Hub repository. Inside this particular image or inside this particular init container, you are executing one command, basically Linux command it is. Linux shell command. What command I am executing? This is just for a shell command I am executing. I am just printing the output for this particular environment variable. How the value for this environment variable is coming? That is defined in the env section. Env section is used to define the environment variable for your containers basically. So the name of my environment value is my pod IP and the value is coming from the field path that is status.pod IP. What is this status.pod IP? Whenever you are going to run the command kubectl apply and this particular YAML file, you will see that a request to create a pod is being sent to the API server, and API server will immediately respond to you that the pod has been created. But that time actually the pod will not be created, it will just be assigned and it will be scheduled to run on some nodes and it will give you a IP address for that particular pod. So that pod IP, whatever API server has given to you, that one is being printed over here using the echo command. After that, whatever the output means, here the output is some IP address 192 dot something, it is there. That will be saved to this particular path inside the init container. I have created a volume called as web content, and inside this volume, I have one path slash IP text inside this path, right? So I have created one file. In this file, I have the value for my pod IP. And after that, my command is just printing that I have wrote the pod IP to the ip.txt page. It is just a simple print statement. Okay. After that, what will happen? See, here I have created a volume mount and the name for the volume mount is web content and the mount path for this particular init container is slash web content. Okay. The mount path will change for each of the container. Whatever you want to give, you can decide and mount path can be changed. But the volume is shared between these multiple containers and can be accessed by each other basically. Here also I am executing a shell command. And what is that shell command? It is just printing the value, this one, hello world, your pod IP is. This is just a simple print statement. And once you execute this particular print statement, the output of this is hello world, your pod IP is, and this is getting saved to this particular file, web content index.html. This is the volume mount I have created for this second init container. After that, what it is doing? It is doing a cat of this particular file, cat web content ip.txt. So once you catch this particular file, you will get the IP address of the pod basically, okay? And that IP address is again being saved to this or appended to this web content index.html file. And after that, you are getting a final print statement that is the index.html with the pod IP. This one is created, right? And here we have again used the same volume mount and the path is web content. Slash web content is the path. And here I have created one file called as index.html. And in that index.html, your content is hello world, your pod IP is, and then the pod IP. Okay. This is basically the two init containers are created and it is making sure that this is the message which is getting created onto the index.html page and it will be served on your web page. Now, Now starts the main container. These containers will do their job and it will vanish or it will stop. Now the main container, what it will do, the main container here we are using the Nginx web server image, and again we are using the same volume mount, and the volume mount path is this one, user usr share and Nginx HTML, because this is the path from where your Nginx web page serves their web page basically. And inside that you have your index.html file, and in that index.html file you have the message hello world your pod IP and whatever it is. Okay. Now finally the volume, we have created the volume called as web content, and it is a type is empty dir. Empty dir means once the pod is deleted, you can't recover or the volume will not be persisted. The path will be deleted every time it will be recreated. So the basically the volume here is not persistence volume, right? So this is the overall thing what we are doing in this init container file. The volume section is defined at the pod level, right? So this volume section we have defined at the pod level. Kind, metadata, aspect, and then the volumes, right? Because this volume is being used by all the containers. It declares what type of storage are available to the pod and gives them a name. So here we are using a empty dir type of volume, and it is ephemeral volume because once the pod is created and deleted, so then the pod will, you don't have the persistence value for this particular volume type. This is ideal for temporary data and being used for sharing the value across multiple containers. You understood, right? We are sharing the same file between the multiple containers, two init containers, one main container. We are sharing the same file. So for that purpose, for the temporary usage, you can use the empty dir type of volume. Now, this yeah, I already explained, but I have written everything over here also. You can go through it. I will share this in on the GitHub, so you can refer from there and you can basically understand this in much more detail. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to apply this particular container file. Just copy the path and let's run this kubectl apply f-f, and then it will be created in the default namespace basically. Now run the command kubectl get pods. It is in the initial state. Okay. Let it be in the running state. Wait for some time. Because it is pulling the image for the first time, and that too we have multiple images in our file. That's why it is taking some time, and it is up and running. So now basically what you can do, now you can use the concept of the port forward, and you can see in the web page whether the message what you have written in your nginx.html file is being served on the web page or not. Let's try to do that. Okay, I think it's served on the 8080 port. Okay, yeah, 8080 colon 80. Now you just copy this path and you are able to see that this particular message is coming from your main container, and it is displaying the message, same message that hello world, your pod IP is this one. And if you run, you can see it over here also. What is your pod IP? I will just put this one kubectl describe pod and the pod name. See the pod IP, what is being used. Or even, okay, see, this is my pod IP, and the same message is coming over the web page also. See, IP is same, right? So this is the overall use of the init container and how it is playing an important role. Now, if you already saw, right, that we created three containers, two init and one main container. But why I'm able to see just one container, one out of one? What if I want to see what the other two init containers did, right? So in that case, you can run the command kubectl logs, and then you have to give the main container, main pod name, And then you have to give the name of that particular init container basically. So in the describe command, if you will see, here you can see the init containers name as well. See, here the init containers are there. I want to see the log for this particular init container. Then in that case, you can just put it over here. See, this is just a simple message which is displaying on the container level or the init for the init container write IP. With the hyphen C flag, you can put the container name for which you want to see the logs. Okay. By default, it shows for the main container, that is web server pod, that is the main pod. But if you want to see for the container inside that, you can give with the hyphen C flag, you can see the log for that particular use case or also. We had three containers in the pod, but only one is in the running state. This is because, as we discussed before, init containers run to the completion and then it get vanished. In this case, two init containers created the nginx index HTML web page and exited with the non-zero exit codes. And then the main nginx container started running with the custom HTML page. This I already explained to you. What is the overall purpose of the init containers? Let me go through it once more. What we did overall, we just created a pod, and inside this pod, I have three containers, out of which two are init containers, one is the main container. Two init container did their job, and after that it vanished or it stopped. And then the main container came into picture, which is using the same file what the two init containers have modified, and it is serving the web page using that particular same file as well. So do let me know in the comment section if you like this kind of videos. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel DevOps Tech Stack. Thank you.